Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Coach's Corner. Each and every Thursday, I am blessed to have the opportunity to speak with college coaches from across the country, from all levels and divisions. And we take a few moments to help parents and student athletes understand all levels, all divisions of college baseball. Hopefully, allow parents to feel less overwhelmed and much more informed. And I think you're going to truly enjoy this evening's discussion. We have not one, not two, not three, but four Coach Casey's in the house with us. And this is going to really put some smiles on some parents' faces when you hear this. Tonight, I am joined, as many of you know, I was fortunate enough to coach at the NCAA Division III level. And at the time, while I was coaching, the head of the New England chair for the college coaches was John Casey at Tufts University. John spent 40 years at Tufts University, now helps out his son at Johnson in Wales, and we're going to introduce all of them here one at a time. But John Casey and Sons, before we go into introduction, thank you, Coach Casey, for taking the time to join us on your vacation.
I appreciate that, Walter. But before I get into trouble, I'm going to thank my wife, too. She had a part in having these guys. So,
well, what's really great here, and I want parents to understand, this is a Division III, NCAA Division III coaching discussion. And as I alluded to, John Casey spent considerable amount of time at Tufts University, now at Johnson and Wales with his son, Kevin. We have Brendan Casey, his son, who is a head coach. Now, I forgot to mention, all three sons are now head coaches at the NCAA Division III level. Brendan Casey, who helped me orchestrate and put this whole thing together, is the head coach at Worcester Polytechnical Institute in Worcester, Massachusetts, better known as Worcester, Massachusetts. And at the United States Coast Guard Academy, I have Brian Casey. So we are well representative. I'm just going to say hi to Coach Casey, and everybody can wave. Coach Casey, how are you doing tonight, guys? So I have to start, Kevin, because you are, I guess you're working side by side now. I know Brendan and Brian have been alongside as well, but you're still on the ship. But you're now the head guy, and Dad is in the shotgun position. How does it feel to be coaching with your dad, and you're the guy calling the shots, and he's just happy to tag along? How does it feel?
I had a feeling that question was going to come at some point tonight, Walter. I mean, I think anytime as a head coach, right? I think you can add a guy with 43 years of experience in the College Baseball Hall of Fame, and never mind a family member that you could trust as your assistant. I think it's unique. Everyone has different situations in college baseball. I had some experience at the mid-major level at Division I, as well as different levels of Division III. I think we all have our challenges. And for where I am right now, having a guy I could trust, never mind with 43 years of experience in pitching, to lead our pitching staff, we're very young. It couldn't have been a better time. So, it's a huge bonus. I'm a big believer that this sport requires a lot of time and manpower and effort and a lot of hours away from home. And when you could bring your family to campus every day, I have a little 2-year-old now, and now Papa's down at practice with us, and that makes life a lot easier. But our guys also get to see that. And I think, we're very relationship based. The guys I worked for in the past were very relationship based. So it kind of ties all into what we're doing. And I'm very fortunate enough that obviously my old man has done an unbelievable job in this game before us. And now I get to hitch on for a couple more years as with him on our staff. It was awesome. It was tremendous to learn from him. It was awesome to learn from some other coaches. And now we get to blend that together. And I think when we get to bounce back some baseball knowledge in that dugout, it's been pretty awesome.
What I really love is the true. This is a baseball family. Now, I like to say that both my sons, they played, but they watched me coach. They never got to see me coach. So I know, John, you're beaming with pride. I want to kind of come back to you before I get to Brian and Brandon, and I want to talk to you a little bit about New England baseball, Division III is very prevalent. There's no better person to ask this question. When you're out recruiting, a lot of parents get consumed with, my son's an 8th grader, a 9th grader, they're not getting recruited. But Division III really doesn't start recruiting with regard to actively, getting involved with the student athlete till probably the latter half of a junior high school season and then into the senior fall. Can you speak a little bit about the recruiting process from an NCAA Division III perspective?
Sure, Walter. I think Division III has benefited greatly from the way recruiting has changed, right? Everyone's trying to identify some 12 and 13-year-old kid who's going to be the next superstar.
Right.
And what's happened is they miss a lot, right? And then you can understand why, right? I mean, it's hard. It's a tough thing to do. And there's this arms race, and there's all these kids who are developing later, which is what males do, and they're looking for a place. But you're right. The timetable is junior year, right? That's where you want to get on, at all coaches' radar, right? It's all happening then anyway. Even if you're good, don't sell yourself short. All coaches want talent, and they're not going to turn their back to it. But in Division III, just like in every division, there is a wide scope of programs, right? The Division III model is that you're a student as well as an athlete, and that is just has to be that way, right? And so you don't get as many don't get as much preferential treatment as an athlete necessarily in Division III programs. So you're there to go to school, and I don't think each one's mutually exclusive. I think you do both great, right? I mean, I think there's a time and a place, And speaking as someone who played, I went to school because you got to go to school in a certain way, and then you take classes because you like it and you see where it's going to take you. But in my mind, I went to play sports because it was my passion. I wanted to compete, and that's what made my day, And you're never the same person if you don't follow your passions, and that's what you look for in terms of athletes. And so the timing of it's great. You get to look at guys, you get to offer them what they're doing. But the beautiful part is, those guys are going to experience the whole college, every aspect of college, right? I think one of the things that bothers me the most is I think coaches are educators, and what bothers me the most is when I hear parents come back and say, well, I was told my son couldn't be an engineer because of baseball. Well, my answer to every parent is, your son's going to be what his profession is a lot longer than what his athletic career is, unless he's in that 0.5%. And so use athletics to get to the best educational position you can be in. There's no question that makes sense. And then make sure you take advantage of both things, because there's a lot you're going to learn about yourself on the field that you're not going to learn in the classroom. And there's a lot of knowledge you're going to learn in the classroom that you can't quite get on the field. Well,
I agree wholeheartedly with trading athletic ability for academic excellence. And almost as if you served it up on a tee, we talk engineering, we move over to Brendan at WPI. Now, having lived in Auburn, Massachusetts, and being in the heart of Worcester for over 25 years, I know the strength academically that WPI possesses with regard to quality of degrees. So, Brendan, when you're out recruiting and somebody is specifically looking into engineering, regardless of their athletic ability, WPI is going to offer them a tremendous opportunity academically. And obviously, I know Mike Callahan was there for many years. WPI has a very rich baseball tradition. So how do you begin to approach a student athlete? At what point in their high school career, and how do you begin the process to introduce WPI to a family?
Absolutely. So, engineering is one of our strongest niches. I think it's what we are known for, is our engineering programs. We have several other strong programs at WPI as well, which is, something that I'm trying to get out there, to the high school student athletes. You don't need to come to WPI strictly for the engineering. Now it's one of the strongest engineering programs in the Northeast, and we don't want to look past that. It's about the same timeline. It's going to be that junior year, the spring of their junior year when we're really starting to bear down on them into the summer, and even leading into a little bit of the fall of their senior year is when we're really targeting our student athletes. I feel, very lucky to be at an institution like WPI. I think the high academic student athlete is someone I'm really drawn to, not being one myself. I was the first one of the Casey boys not to go to Tufts University. I strayed away. I was the guy that got off the bus, dropped the bag, went down to hit, didn't study. I found the value of education a little bit later in life. And one of the reasons why I really like being at a high academic institution, which I learned at Tufts while coaching under my father, is the type of kid that you're able to bring in. They're a very driven, competitive individual. I know the boss, Coach Case, mentioned earlier, that, and it's something that I believe in as well, is that I'm never going to tell a kid that they can't major in anything when they come to WPI. I'm a firm believer in that you have all the time in the world for what's important to you, and that this is the stage of your life where it's time to start, setting your priorities, and you'll be able to follow your passions in the classroom and on the field. I think that's the awesome thing about, Division III baseball and what it offers.
Well, one of the things that we're going to include here is from a military component. We often talk about the academies, and we talk about the Air Force Academy, obviously West Point, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, but we also have that Coast Guard Academy, which is located in Connecticut. And so, Brian, when you're recruiting, there's a lot of balls you're juggling, because you're juggling an academic ball, an athletic ball, but also a military commitment or service commitment that's tied to that. Talk to parents a little bit about the Coast Guard Academy and what they offer with regard to not only the academics, but you as a baseball program as well.
Sure. It's certainly its own niche. And one of the things that I found in my experience here now, going into my third spring and my second full recruiting cycle, is the service academies and the military academies offer an awesome package to a bunch of people. And I think we all have our preconceived notions about service and what it entails and what we're drawn to and those sorts of things. So we're going to have plenty of student athletes and families that are looking that route, that are now trying to decide which academy is best fit for them and what they're trying to do, and sort of answering that how they want to serve component. But we've also found there's been some guys out there that didn't quite know what this place actually is about, and maybe service wasn't on their mind when they started their recruiting process, that they ended up at the Coast Guard Academy specifically, but some of our other service academies. So it's certainly an option that I would implore parents and student athletes to look into if you have an interest there, because there's a lot of different ways to go about service. Some people think obviously that sort of front line of defense mentality. Us at the Coast Guard, our mission as a whole is humanitarian mission. It's a life-saving, life preservation component. We're Department of Homeland Security, not Department of Defense. So within our responsibilities, there's different ways to, serve. So a lot of the times when I'm sitting down with parents that have or students that have an interest in service, it's sort of saying, okay, we know you want to serve. How do you want to do it? Right? Because we do have our section of the Coast Guard that does a little bit of law enforcement, drug interdiction. We have our TASLA, MSRT stuff, which is sort of like our frontline law enforcement wing. But then we also have just engineers that are civil engineers on base, making sure the thing runs right. We have naval architecture engineers that are building boats and building the next line of ships that are coming out. So there's a lot of different ways to serve. And what we're looking for our program is baseball guys that want to be in the Coast Guard. And I think that's been, a big shift in my time there, and some of the stuff that's coming out with our athletic programs. It's not just Coast Guard people that want to play sports collegiately. It's collegiate athletes that want to serve in the Coast Guard and go down that avenue as profession, whether it's for 5 years or 40 years. So Those are the guys that we're on the lookout for in the recruiting process on the recruiting trail. The one thing that I think is a little different for us is we try to get a little bit more involved with them earlier in the process if we see them, particularly their sophomore year. And a lot of it has to do with making sure that they're taking the proper classes to get into our academy, because we're a little bit more specific in what we're looking for, particularly when it comes to the STEM classes. Our guys need to hit chemistry, physics, and calculus. If you're a management major, you still need to have those as if you were a STEM major, where you're going to probably have those classes on your transcript. So we try to help navigate that a little bit early on. But in terms of like the baseball identification piece, looking for the same stuff that I looked at when I was at William & Mary, when I was at Tufts. A lot of those things, have carried over at each level, at each place.
I think the one area that I want to go to next, Kevin, if I can, with regard to, we'll talk Johnson & Wales now, is parents have this misunderstanding that there's absolutely no money or financial aid available because they don't hear the word scholarship. But between merit money, grant money, a variety of different packages that can be put together financially by Division III programs, how does Johnson & Wales kind of get that point across to parents that there's packages that can be put together? They're just not athletic scholarships as they might understand them to be at the Division I and II levels of the NCAA.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, one of my biggest adjustments when I took over from Johnson Wales was at the time I was recruiting at Northeastern with scholarship money. And then previous to that was at Tufts. So I was definitely in a little bit more of a higher academic realm coming to Johnson Wales. And I think, just like Brian said, I don't think our eyes recruiting wise really change, right? As coaches, no matter what, we're trying to attract the best players out on the field, the best kids, the best families. We spend a lot of time around each other. I think no matter what level you go to, you're trying to get that. And for us in Providence, when I first took over the team, it was probably the first team I've ever had where, we had 4 guys that were from the islands. English was definitely a second language. It was definitely a very diverse clubhouse with families that had some money, some families that didn't come from some backgrounds. And I think, that was one of our strengths. And I think as we continued to build it over the couple of years, it's really been that academic piece that's been a big part for attracting a lot of our guys to campus. And when I say the academic piece is that's where a lot of the money now is coming from. So where you're looking at, just from a ballpark standpoint, the sticker price can be intimidating. And you could look at, $58,000 when it's all said and altogether, room and board and all that stuff. But I think, when you go down our roster, most of our players are getting somewhere in that $18,000 to $25,000 academic scholarship or merit package based on being a good student and doing that stuff. And we've kind of aided them through that process a little bit on ways that they can find more money, whether that's doing some of the standardized testing and stuff like that. But now you're looking at a much more affordable education and with families deciding on, whether or not to go to state school or value the private education side of it. I think that's where we've had a lot of success. I think we've had a lot of success too on some guys that have been on that verge of those academic schools and kind of have gotten the letter of bad news, but have followed up and have gotten an unbelievable package. And, we preach the man makes the degree, right? I think, no matter where you go, you got to take advantage of the opportunities that this university or those universities present. There's always going to be an easy way and a hard way, right? And I think the people that take advantage of what those institutions present them ultimately graduate with the ticket to success ultimately.
Now, John, I want to go to you because this is something that I think has really meaning for you, not only watching your sons evolve into becoming head coaches, successful head coaches. I want to go to the relationships over the course of 43 plus years with all of your former student athletes. And Division III baseball, in my opinion, is a little bit more intimate with regard to you're really involved with these student athletes as a girlfriend counselor, a landlord counselor, a professor, academic counselor. You're kind of a jack of all trades at the Division III level. I think Division III baseball is misunderstood, and it presents such a valuable opportunity for those 4 or 5 years in a student athlete's life to experience being a part of a team, learning, how to become a man. And then more importantly, you're ultimately preparing to enter what I call the real world. So you've seen this for 43 years. What's changed today as opposed to maybe 10 or 15 years ago? You mentioned Division III is taking advantage of the portal and some of the other things. Are student athletes now giving Division III baseball a more serious look because of the academic and, more importantly, because of the opportunities athletically?
Well, over 40 years, Walter, what I'll tell you is, 40 years ago, it was if you went to college, you had a leg up, right? And now it's where did you go to college? But I agree with what Kev says, which is it's the fit now, right? More than anything else. So if you find the right fit, then you're gonna do well. And I think that's where people need to educate themselves, is to find the place where they're going to excel. And I always tell people, I used to get in trouble at Tufts when I sit down at the admissions, because I tell our admissions director, listen, this isn't that hard a business. This is like trying on a pair of shoes. Okay? You can go with the shoe that feels really good and be happy, or you can try to stick your foot into this good-looking shoe, but you're going to pay a price later on for it. And that's all it is. And so that's what's happened. I'll get in trouble now because as I've gotten older, I don't care anymore. I think what's happened now is COVID's hurt. Okay. And it's hurt because a lot of coaches aren't coaching anymore. They're not in the office. And that's not right, because those moments are where you make or break your student athlete's career. When that kid comes walking down the hall and needs to talk to you and you're no longer around, that's a statement to that kid. And the thing is that then you're going to go out and you're going to ask that kid to play hard again. And they're going to go, wow, you weren't there for me. And so the reason why you're in Division III in my mind always was that it was part of the educational process, right? It was the arena where you could find out so much about yourself, and those lessons make or break you, and in a lot of ways. And you were part of that, and you wanted to share that and be there with them, be supportive with them. And it wasn't like, you had to win, right? I mean, when you were gonna win if you did it the right way, but you still were taking care of your guys. And I will tell you, the best part of my career is when I get a phone call from a kid who graduated years ago telling me, Coach, I remember what you said to me, and this is what I did today in the office, and it worked. Or I'm doing a presentation, Coach, can you send me that speech you did? And I'm looking at it, man, that was 12 years ago, kid. Tell me some more about it. And then I look it up and I send it to them, and they go, this is great. And so you have an impact on someone, right? And I think that's what matters. And so, that part of baseball matters, that you view it as educational, as part of your whole experience. And I think that's the most important thing you can do is to take, it's what you do, not what you say, that matters. And that's what you're trying to teach kids. And that's what baseball is, right? You can talk that game, but you got to play it and you got to execute. And it's hard because you never know when your name's called, right? You never know in this game. I mean, you're out there for 8 2/3 innings, and all of a sudden you got to be in the right spot in the right moment to make the right play. And it takes a lot to be there. And that's sort of what coaching is. So you got to be there for your players and make sure they know. And I always told our guys, the one thing that matters to me is, like Kev said, it's relational, right? You always play harder when you truly care about the guy next to you, right? The easiest person in life to let down is yourself, and you don't want to let down other people you care about. And so that's how you create team.
I remember that story. I think you told me that story maybe in 2001 when I took over Becker. Just be there, make sure you're available. And I'll never forget the big fire in the Rhode Island music venue where Great White was there. And we had a bunch of kids from Rhode Island. And I literally had a parade of kids come through just wanting to talk about that experience. So I remember that. That's one of the pieces of advice that I vividly remember you telling me at an ABCA. And I want to ask Brendan, maybe both from a Coast Guard perspective, all three, Kev, Brian, do you guys get any Division I transfers now that the portal is all, convoluted and crowded and there's no room at the end? Do you guys get any guys that want to kind of come down from Division I or Division II or up from NAIA or junior college? What's the transfer process like for NCAA Division III? We'll start with Brendan.
Right now, I don't have any experience with it just because I'm just getting my feet wet and underneath me. I started at the end of October. I've looked on the portal, trying to see if there's any potential fits here and there. It may be an option that we explore, but I'm kind of a believer of, I like to bring in, the athlete for the 4-year experience and kind of grow and develop that way. Relationships, it was talked about earlier. That's why I got into the business. And I think sometimes it takes time to really develop those relationships. We just started practice this past week, and my main focus is trying to get around as much as I can and just talk to these guys and really, really get to know them before I can coach them. Because I could say everything I want about, mechanics, drills and what have you until I'm blue in the face. But if they truly don't trust me, they're not going to buy into what I'm saying. So ultimately, my goal is to kind of develop these relationships with these kids. And I think it starts when you recruit them, starting from their summer, their junior year, spring of their junior year, going forward, all the way through their experience at your institution.
Brian, do you have any experience with any of the transfers after post-COVID portal?
I was at William Mary when COVID hit, so we were dealing with a little bit of that stuff at the get-go there in terms of what are we going to do with our seniors? What are we doing with the number of guys coming in? I know what we did there was we stayed committed to our guys in the program and took care of them first. And with where we were recruiting-wise, we sort of just made sure we didn't bring in more bodies than we could roster or, honor the scholarships that and the promises we made. At Coast Guard, it's a little different. If we have transfers come in, they almost need to restart their academic process because there's certain things that they need to do, first year through their fourth year here in terms of their training to prepare to be an officer. So the transfers we deal with are going to be guys that, went to another 4-year school. Maybe it didn't work out, but they want to reapply. So it's probably after their first year. So they're not restarting after 2 years in a sense. But I would tell you a lot of my experience with guys that have looked into connecting with us after they've gone somewhere else, it's because there was a relationship, there was a connection made at some point during the process. They made another choice, but they had some sort of impression from us in our recruiting process that said, hey, I didn't get this right the first time. I'm going to try to, hunt down this coach that I liked, that some of the stuff that they talked about of how they do things, like that might be a better fit with me, almost like a trial and error type thing where, for whatever reason they made the first choice, there are certain things that stuck out from our relationship previously that drew them to say, hey, I'm going to see what their experience was. So the relationship part, I think, starts not just while they're with you on campus, but, how that recruiting process, goes into that decision leading up to that point. So those are the guys that sort of reconnected with me if we didn't get it right away out of high school.
Kevin, can you talk a little bit about what it's been like for you for having that relationship from a high school perspective and into the Johnson & Wales program? Are you retaining a lot of those freshmen? That was the big hurdle for me, was making sure they didn't get homesick, making sure I was managing personalities. Are you finding that there's a good retention rate with each of your freshman classes over the last few years?
Yeah, I think we've had a success on that. I think it's, we recruit very similar to like how we recruited before, and before it was a little bit limited because of scholarships and roster spots at Division I level. Prior to that at Tufts, it was limited because of the academics. We have a roster of 35 guys. We want to develop our 35 guys I shy away. It does happen at some institutions at the Division III level. People have multiple ways to do it, but some people are held to driving up enrollment. For us, that's not the case and not the cause. We're a 35-man roster. If I'm graduating 4 or 5, that's the number we're looking to bring in, and it's going to be a competitive class on that manner. But we're not looking to be in the business of trying to bring in classes of 10, 15, 20, cutting 5 or 6 sophomores, a couple juniors or seniors. We really value the relationship side. We believe in our player development systems that we've started to install at our level, and we've had some success with it. And I think that's because our guys know that they can get comfortable. They're going to put the work in. We're all going to work hard on that side of it. But they don't have to look over their times. And, to go back to your question about the transfer portal, we've had some success with that. And I think view it as more of, we need to fill in a hole. We've had an injury. We don't have 9 first basemen anymore. We have 2 or 3 guys there. We're looking to have 15 to 17 positional guys. That's it. And that's not a ton of depth. That's, right now we're in a situation where we have 2 catchers. We brought in a third baseman to start getting some reps back there as an emergency guy, because, we're not a typical Division III roster that's carrying 6 or 7 catchers. We value having about 17, 18 arms and 15 to 17 positional guys, and that gets your 35 guys. And that's kind of how we go on that side of things. So we have used JUCO. I never got the pleasure to really work the junior college circuit at previous institutions of the tough time of credits and all that transferring in. We've had a little bit of success with that stuff, and we've had some success, like I said, on getting some guys from the Division II and the Division I level to come down here and play. And I think once they get to campus, they realize, baseball is baseball. We got coaches down here that want to work hard. They got some awesome experience, and I think it's been a great match in that, in a lot of ways, the Division I guy coming down Division III thinking it's going to be a whole lot different. I think a lot of it is just a lot more self-ownership on your career, and the fact that there's periods of the year that unfortunately the NCAA doesn't allow us to be in the room necessarily, right? So I think it's on that standpoint, like I said, we're trying to keep our 35-man roster and recruit to what we need.
Now, John, I always used to get asked from parents about summer opportunities, potentially professional opportunities. There's no better man to ask this question. You've been around, you've seen a lot of student athletes, not only at Tufts, but within the Division III, especially in New England, get opportunities to go on to play professionally, get opportunities to play in the Cape Cod League. Can you speak from a parent's perspective, when a student athlete is coming to Division III, it's not like they're just saying, oh boy, I'm never going to play professionally. I'm not going to get an opportunity to go out into the summer. Division III is as competitive, if not more so, than Division II or I, at least in New England, as I can speak to, but you can speak to it on a national level. But there are plenty of opportunities if you're good enough and playing at Division III, you will get your opportunities at the next level, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, there's, I don't think I've ever coached a single college team without guys on it that said, I'm going to be a pro, and they work at it, right? And Walter, better than anyone else, the separator is that drive that person has. Not necessarily the talent, but the drive and whether they're willing to make the sacrifices to be great. And so you can get those at any level. I'll give you a quick story. We had my last year. I thought we had a pitcher who was something special, and at Tufts, and I retired and left. And I grabbed Stevie Anglin, who's a good friend, and I know Kev coached with Northeastern, and he's coached at Harwich. And I says, could you just do me a favor and take this guy in a temp for me? I'm calling in a favor. And he goes, okay, coach, every guy you give me has been good, so I'll do it. So he took him in. Well, the kid stuck the whole year and wound up pitching for him a lot. And again, so it's all about what you do with your opportunity, right? And so here's a kid who winds up being a pitcher, getting a lot of innings in the Cape. And all of a sudden now I'm getting all these calls from scouts. What is he? Who is he? And I said, well, you got to come see him. He's pretty good. You've seen him. And now I'll tell you all the other stuff that matters. I'll tell you about who he is as a player, who he is as a person, right? Because those are the things that are going to wind up being the real reason why he goes, and so there's those stories all the time. And the one thing about baseball is you got to play this game to get better at it. You don't get better throwing into a net. You don't get better hitting into a net. You got to play the game. And if you look at things right now, if you sit around, if you go to a showcase and listen and sit around with 30 coaches, you hear it now. Like they're recruiting, they go, man, I like that guy. He knows how to play. Right. And that's what's happened in this world is that we've compartmentalized it so much that the guys who know how to play now stand out. The guys who throw behind a runner, the guys who take extra bases, they stand out because too many guys are just compartmental in this game. And so those become separators. So I think that there's all kinds of ways. I've had kids drafted, signed, had great careers. And they've got, sometimes the pros don't like the kids from smart schools because they have options.
Right.
But I always look at it saying those kids are driven because they've done both well. Those are the special ones, right? Those are the competitive kids. So there's always a place. Parents, again, here's what I'll tell you. You always do best where you're happiest. And so if you find that right fit of school, that's where that player will take off from. And so I think that's really, really important. You always keep that in the back of your mind.
Now, you have to ask, is there a Coast Guard versus Johnson & Wales? Is there a WPI against Coast Guard? How does this work? Do you guys are you going to get into the schedule with the ADs and say, okay, we got to make this happen? Because it makes it easy on mom, right? Because if mom could figure out, all right, I can go see Brian play Brennan, or I can see Kevin and John at the same time. Do you guys get together on a scheduling basis with the ADs yet, or is that further down the road?
Well, this one goes back a ways. When I was a pitching coach at William & Mary, Kevin was the hitting coach at Northeastern, same conference. So mom used to show up to the game like during BP so she could try to find a stadium seat that was directly in the middle, but she never picked sides. So Kevin and I, we played non-conference. We made sure we put each other on the schedule. And I'll tell you from my perspective, when we were doing scheduling, we want to play good programs because we want to see how good we are. And I know those guys are going to be coached well. So it's going to be a good test for us non-conference. And now Brendan is actually in our conference. So we got a 3-game slate scheduled for April. So we'll have to charge admission for that one.
Oh, man, mom's got to be pumped there. What gear does she wear, though? Does she wear the Johnson & Wales jersey to the WPI Coast Guard game? Everybody's represented at that point. That's how I would do it. That's like a
way around
standoff.
That will definitely be suggested, Walter. Just
So I want to ask each of you, because first of all, I want to let parents understand two things. First of all, I'm going to have every one of the coaches here today. So we have John and Kevin at Johnson & Wales. They have Brendan Casey at WPI. And we have Brian at the United States Coast Guard. I'm going to have all their contact information, emails. I'm not sure about social media. I have Brendan's. I know I have John's. I think I have Kevin's, but I'll get with you, Brian. I have all that listed. So if you need to reach out to these schools, I encourage you to take the time to send out an email. These are arguably 4 of the best college coaches in New England. I can speak definitively for John Casey because coaching with and against him a few occasions, he was everywhere. If I was at Pheno Field in Milford, John Casey would be there looking at somebody. So I always knew I had to look over my shoulder to see who I was scouting. So as a parent, NCAA Division III, I don't care if you're in Texas, Florida, these are great academic universities and colleges that can provide your student athlete with a great full college experience. And so I want to ask each one of you before we leave, because it is a weekend and it is a little chilly, so I'm sure we have family plans inside. But let's start with you, Kevin. You're in a baseball, I would say you're in a college community. You're in Rhode Island. You're in the greater Providence area. What does Johnson & Wales offer? What separates Johnson & Wales as a prospective university for a student athlete, whether in-state or out-of-state?
I think to be honest with you, the answer's simple. I think it gives it packages in that very similar to my time at Northeastern with the co-op program. We're a very work experience based education, and I think once you get back back a little bit from the traditional, what it was built on with the culinary program, and you start to dive into the business side of things, criminal justice, the engineering, the marketing side of the programs. And what the unique package is that you're able to be in Providence, Rhode Island, in a city, college city, surrounded by other colleges and universities. You got work opportunities right outside your door. And the nice piece is the internship is going to be built into your education. You're not going to have to sacrifice one or the other or make those decisions. In fact, towards a degree, by being able to get valuable work experience. And I think Coach Case touched base on it earlier, right? I think college is no longer just a separator. Now it's, where's the degree from, but what else have you done? You're also a student athlete. Do you have any work experience? And I think a place like Johnson Wales has been able to provide our student athletes with a unique package of having education, athletic work experience, and then as well as the social life that is a valuable experience in college. It kind of that whole side of it and that unique package that you don't necessarily get at a lot of places.
And Brendan, I know being in Worcester, Massachusetts, we have Assumption, we have Holy Cross, we have Clark, and obviously WPI, all kind of within, I would say, a 5-mile radius of each other. So Worcester, Massachusetts, on top of being the second largest city in New England, is a college community that oftentimes gets overlooked. Talk a little bit about the, Park Avenue community at WPI and what WPI has to offer over and above engineering.
Yeah, I mean, Worcester is a college town. It's a great place to spend your 4 years of college, where you're not going to just have, necessarily the students at WPI, but you'll have the students at the surrounding institutions that you'll be able to develop relationships and meet. It's a great way to spend your 4 years. And then, at WPI, it's an opportunity to get a world-class education. Our guys are challenged constantly in the classroom. They're provided with great opportunities. When they're leaving and they're graduating after their 4 years at WPI, they're all having jobs lined up with great competitive salaries for first-year employees. I mean, it's a tremendous return on your investment for the guys that come in, and then they're going to get the opportunity to play very good college baseball. The college baseball in New England overall is outstanding, especially at the Division III level. And then I think, the NEWMAC conference as a whole is certainly one of the strongest conferences in New England. Every weekend is going to be a battle. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to April and going up against Coast Guard and playing Bryan. It's going to be a great weekend just to spend some time with family and compete like we used to in our backyard, except for now we're doing it with a bunch of other guys as our players. So it's awesome. I think, it's just, I feel like, WPI is a place, where you truly can have it all. You can have that great education that's going to set you up for your next 40 years, and you're going to be able to play really good baseball, and you're going to develop strong relationships within that program and within other students amongst the university.
And Brian, talking about New London, Connecticut, I mean, obviously you guys represent New England really well, but that is an area that's really special with regard to anything pertaining to nautical, but specifically with regard to the Service Academy, the Coast Guard in New England, obviously being very prevalent, us being on the coastline. But talk about the Coast Guard Academy and just how you feel it offers a lifetime of opportunity for prospective student athletes.
Yeah, it's a tremendous package. From an academic standpoint, you're talking about top 4, top 5 public education in the entire country. So a degree that will serve you well in your preparation to be an officer in the Coast Guard, but also have a lasting impact in terms of where you take from it if you decide to leave after 5 or not serve for your entire career. It's a tremendous community. I think one of the things that we're all looking for here is a way to add value. And going to a place like that, that you're in service of something bigger than yourself, the ability to serve a community, to serve a nation, to serve others. So you get a chance to lead a life of impact. And our guys are preparing to be leaders of character. And when they commission at the end, they're going to be in charge of other people that are, underneath them in their rank, and they got to be able to do the job that's asked of them and be prepared for it. So they're going to have value and have a career that's going to be able to impact a bunch of different things. And then obviously, from a baseball standpoint, Brendan mentioned it. It's a tremendous league. We're in a tremendous region. So we're going to try to win some baseball games while we're at it. So in terms of the entire package, education, athletic experience, and opportunity for a future at a nothing cost, no tuition, it's a pretty good deal. So we're very fortunate, and we get to work with some pretty tremendous kids. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to go to work every day and work with the type of kids I get a chance to every day. It's awesome.
Well, I want to say thank you to you guys. I really appreciate collectively all four of you taking the time to join me, and I really think this is a wonderful, well-rounded discussion on the topic of NCAA Division III athletics. Gentlemen, I would like to propose an idea that you could present, whether it's to the ABCA New England chapter. I think the NCAA Division III New England MVP or Player of the Year should be given the John Casey Achievement Award every year. I feel that that's something that should be put on the table. John, you can second that if you like. I really believe that that's an award that would carry a tremendous amount of weight. Would be a prestigious award. I've mentioned this to a few people at the time. I don't know if you gentlemen know Coach Perrone, Kenny Perrone, who was at Salem State for a number of years. I said something to him. He said, "Heck, don't do it with my name. Put Casey's name on it. He'll appreciate it much more than everybody else would." So there's an idea to run up the flagpole. But guys, a tremendous family, parents. I cannot stress enough. I have had the pleasure of knowing John Casey for several decades as a colleague and as a friend. We don't see each other often, but when we do, it's always very, very sincere, genuine. As you can tell by his sons, the apples do not far from the tree. So, gentlemen, have a wonderful season, albeit I know it's a little chilly up here in New England, but it is baseball season. As soon as the green flag drops after the Super Bowl, it's officially baseball season. Right. So good luck to each and every one of you. I hope Mom wears the Johnson & Wales to the Coast Guard WPI tilt. I will be in attendance to one of those games on Park Ave this year, Brendan. But thank you guys very, very much, and tremendous representation of NCAA Division III baseball. Thank you to the Casey family.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you guys.
Very much.
Appreciate it. Bye now, guys.
Bye-bye.